and it's time to talk about your team, your beloved St George Illawarra Dragons.
Yeah.
Interesting one this. They played against a reserve grade South Sydney team, although I want to give credit to South. They were outstanding. Those players, those young guns really stood up. So South were in good stead with the 1 to 17 they've got and the team they fielded on the weekend performing the way they did. The Dragons had pretty much their first grade team in. Charity Shield in Wollongong too.
Yeah.
And I don't read into trials.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think you can throw it in the bin. I've never been a fan of anyone, reading too much in the trials or thinking that's going to translate into the season. I don't think there's much evidence of it either, to be honest, over the years. So I'm going to cut them a bit of slack. But you as a fan, I want to ask you as a fan, because there's been a lot of optimism around the Dragons. They have been talked up. They have been talked up, and the fans are really excited. Are you worried as a fan after watching that game?
I think I'm with you when it comes to trials. They're meaningless in a way, right? But regardless of things that occurred, they had to find a way to get the job. They just had to win. I know, Cookie drops that ball, and there's a few things that happen in the game but when you sit down and break those two teams down on paper, it shouldn't have even got close in the first half, right? So I'm a little bit concerned from that respect, but you hear about stuff around training loads and things like that in trials as well. They're different because they're playing a week before South. Their training loads are probably different, and that's an easy excuse. But if I'm sitting there watching, I'm a little bit concerned by what I saw, and it's the same elements of concern that I had at times last year, where the game's getting faster, the Dragons aren't, and that's a concern.
Is it talent? Is it their roster? Is it the way that they play? Is it their coaching? What is it?
No, it's definitely. I just don't think they've got an emerging roster, particularly the forward pack. They got some really, really good young forwards, and signing Keon Kamatangi complements that next season. So I think the forward pack and the foundations are there, particularly in the forwards, right? But you look at some of the key positions, and we talk about in the spine, Keith Gutherson, heart and soul player, right? The game this time now is built on speed, right? Who is in that Dragons lineup, particularly in the middle of the field at the moment, and then playing off the back of that's something that could cut a game open, right? That's the concern. Their strengths are their edges, Sua, elite. Leilua's come back in really, really good shape and looked like a handful in Origin, Holmes and Sully, right? That's probably where you sit there and you break it down their squad, you go, okay, that's where their strike is. But can they roll forward enough? Can the halves and the fullback get them clean enough ball to give these guys some opportunities, one-on-one opportunities on an edge? That's my concern.
It's a good point. They've got a young forward pack who need to go from boys to men very quickly. And I think they can, but to do that week in, week out, long season, is going to be difficult, but it's going to be difficult if they play the way they did the other night, and that's not even, we haven't started yet, right? So there's going to be a big emphasis on Vegas and looking for a huge improvement. You talk about the speed there, and you're right, Gutho's a freak, but he's not getting any quicker at fullback. Cookie was one of the quickest nines in the game, but he's also getting on, But he's still quick, but probably doesn't have that same acceleration he did have. Cole Flanagan's not renowned for being quick, never really has been. Atkinson's got speed, but then is he a number 7 or is he a number 6, which has been the question mark all pre-season. But the coaching staff's backed him as the 7 for months now. We had Mick Innes on here a couple of weeks ago saying how good they're going at training and they're flying. And being honest, I'm a little sceptical of the Dragons and have been before that trial. And not to say that I don't think they can do well this year. I do. I think they can get to a point where they're fighting for a top 8 spot. But I didn't quite buy into the hype before that game. And after that game, as I said, I'm not willing to put a line through them, or I don't want to shoot them down or be negative, but for me, nothing's changed. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they improve a hell of a lot from that and they shock a few people after that performance, because, again, I just don't read into the trial form. And you've also got a new halves combination that haven't played a proper game together, you know, and a 7 that I think's a 6 that's trying to learn to be a 7 over a pre-season. Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and without, like you said, speed in key positions and big game experience, you know, they are behind the 8 ball before the season even starts. I just think the hype has been too much around them.
Do you think that the hype was a little bit built off, and he's not even there, it's Keon, right? Do you think
that means nothing
it means
now.
nothing. It means absolutely nothing. But
and to be fair, you know, if Keon comes into that team and they play like they did the other night, it ain't going to change nothing.
No chance. But there'd been a stench around the Dragons for their inability to sign players, right?
Yeah.
And they...
Why haven't they been able to sign players?
Well,
you're a fan. You're inside.
I think the organisation were very slow, very reactive, right? They got on the front foot with Keon, the infamous helicopter flight, right? That's a different way of thinking that's now in that organisation that hadn't been there. I felt like for so long, you know, players would be on the market, the Dragons would read about it instead of knowing about it before they were on the market, right? So they've you know, strengthen those ties up with getting Daniel Anderson in there now. Tim Watford, the CEO, is a guy that's a go-getter as well. So they've changed the energy in and around the club. And I think getting that Keon deal done, whilst it was 5 years and probably too long, right? But that's what they needed to do to get the deal done. I think it just changed that narrative a little bit. And I think the optimism for performances this year came off the back, came off the back of that signing a little bit as well.
Who else do they sign? Who's next? Have they got anyone in mind?
The player that they would have really liked to have signed was Luke Metcalf. I think if he would have been really good for them. Speed.
Did they make a play at him?
Well, he did the deal before November 1.
Okay.
But he would have been one that if he'd come onto the market, they were going to go all in on. And there's not that quality of player there now. So
why do you think players like a Luke Metcalf is not prioritising the Dragons?
Well...
Like, you know, if the Dragons are saying, we'll throw anything at Luke Metcalf, he's exactly what we need, but he signs before November 1.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he be thinking, I'm going to wait and test the market with
Well,
the
I think it's a wrap for the Warriors in a way as well, right? Because they looked after him. He's coming off the ACL and they still showed that faith.
Which makes sense
right?
too.
But there's no doubt, Brad, you've been in a... Like, there was... Before the Keon deal got done, there was this stigma that the Dragons couldn't sign anyone, right? And whether or not it's the split between, you know, living in Wollongong and travelling to Sydney or Sydney and Wollongong, or the fact that they've won one finals game in 10 years doesn't help.
It's a hard one. That's why I think for the Dragons and their fans, it's important they play well this year, because not only just for the players that are playing at the moment and for the fans, but also to attract players, you've got to show progression. Yeah. And if there's no progression, players aren't going to be jumping out of their skin to get there, and they're going to have to continue to play overs for players and sign long-term deals like Keon just to get them through the door.